Well, this is where we divide, Tucker, into right and wrong, good and bad. And I have to say, I feel like majority of mainstream media right now in the UK is on the side of the bad. It is more important for them to be seen as multicultural and accepting and welcoming to our Muslim colleagues and our friends than it is to stand up for what we know is right.
Well, we are back with Katie Hopkins today, and I know I'm sort of doing quite a few videos with Katie Hopkins on this issue about, we're talking about Tommy Robinson, the big grooming gang scandal that's been reinvigorated, so to speak, in the UK, thanks to Elon Musk tweeting about it and tweeting about Tommy Robinson. If you want more information, watch some of the other videos I've put up in the last couple days. But I do think this is a very important issue, and I do think it's worth digging into and not letting slide because, you know, I'm sure the politicians specifically, especially in the UK, will be trying to, deflect attention, divert attention away from this. In fact, they're already very angry about this. There's lots of outcry in the UK about how dare the Americans, how dare that oligarch Elon Musk, that obnoxious rich American with his Twitter, with his X, how dare he talk to us like this? Well, no offense, guys. I love England, been there many times. I was married to an English woman for many years. But I think you need help, honestly. I think you need Elon's help, and not just you. I live in Belgium, and Belgium also has its problems. So does Germany, so does France, so do many European countries. So we're sort of all in this together, but different countries are sort of at different places, places along the downhill slope. And I'm afraid to say, it seems to me that the UK is well and truly in a poor state. You know, it's well and truly on the downhill slide. Now, doesn't mean that they can't pull out of it, but there's a lot of work to do and a lot of tough decisions to make. Let's put it that way. So, having said all that, this is Katie Hopkins. As you can see, she's talking to Tucker Carlson. This is obviously an old clip. This is about 6 years old. So don't remind me in the comments. Some of you just have to say in the comments, this is an old clip. Yes, I know, but it's relevant. Okay, this is to give some background because this is an interview. So Tucker Carlson here is interviewing Katie Hopkins about Tommy Robinson being thrown in jail for contempt of court, I believe, but 6 years ago. Right now, as I record this in early 2025, he's just been jailed again for contempt of court, but in connection with a different case. But this was about 6 years ago. I remember when it happened. He was filming outside a courtroom where some guy was about to get sentenced, a leader of one of these so-called grooming gangs, basically child sexual exploitation gangs, rape gangs. He was just being sentenced. It wasn't a court case in progress. It was his sentencing. And he had been told not to show up on court premises, and apparently he wasn't. He was outside the court, and he was filming, and I believe even the policeman who was outside the court said he could film there. But no, he was arrested. He was thrown in jail for, maybe a year? I can't remember now. I think he was let out early too, but I can't remember. And as I recall, a lot of that was, it was in a very dangerous prison because it was full of Muslims who hate Tommy Robinson because he's been banging on about the Muslim grooming gangs for years. So they had to put him in solitary confinement, for his own safety. So, yeah. Anyway, Tommy Robinson has been at this for many, many years, something like 20 years now. And, supposedly, in the view of the British establishment, this has all been dealt with. They had some sort of minor inquiries about it and supposedly dealt with the problem. But no, I don't think they really dealt with the problem. And I think, those of you who are in the UK know more about this, please feel free to comment. I've been reading all the comments. I'm replying to quite a few, but I'm always happy to learn more about this. But I have kind of followed it off and on over the years. Anyway, let's get into this. This is just general background stuff. you know, if you're a Brit, this is going to be, there's like not going to be anything new here for you. But I do think it's important for everybody to just get some more background, especially if you aren't familiar with Katie Hopkins or Tommy Robinson or the whole grooming gang scandal.
Katie, am I misstating this? I mean, it sounds, and I know the pretext for this is that he was interfering with jurors, but he was speaking his views on a public street when he was arrested and convicted immediately and sentenced to over a year in prison. Am I mischaracterizing that?
You're not at all. That's exactly what happened. He was outside the court. He was reporting on the trial of a grooming gang, as I would call it, a rape squad. It's a cause, as you rightly say, that he's believed in for so many years. And he's one of those people who's been calling this out relentlessly, despite all of the slurs that are made against him. And yet, within 5 hours, he was arrested, he was tried, and he was sent to prison for 13 months. And none of us were allowed to talk about it, write about it, mention it, because there was also a ban on any of the media speaking about it.
Well, that's the part I don't understand.
These are very dark times in the UK. It's a very curious feeling in this country at the moment. And I would say the country is on a knife edge. There is a real sense now that we are against our own government, that the establishment is working against us. And in order to cleanse voices it doesn't like, it will put them inside for as long as it needs to.
The establishment has been working against the people of the UK for many decades, but it is getting more and more blatant. This was 6 years ago. It's getting more. It's even more blatant today.
Shut them up.
That's horrifying. I don't know, I'll be honest, anything really about Tommy Robinson. I don't care. I don't know what he believed. It doesn't matter. He was saying what he thinks in public.
I totally take that, Tucker. I don't know Tommy either. I'm not a colleague of his. I'm not. I don't work with him. Many people say he's an idiot, and in some ways I concur.
So what?
He's been told not to report at these trials, and yet he's still there reporting. He didn't go with his lawyer or solicitor. You know, he knew he was going to get into trouble. But then I say to myself, even if you don't like the guy, even if you don't know the guy, surely there's some fundamental principles like,
yes,
where was the swift justice for the victims of the grooming gangs? Where was the swift justice for the 11-year-old that was raped? If we can get Tommy in prison within 5 hours, where was the swift justice for these men? And where was the swift justice for the victims? And I would also say, no matter what you think of Tommy, whether you hate him, love him, don't know him, throwing him in prison when he is a guy who's repeatedly called out majority Pakistani grooming gangs, rape squads, that is a death sentence for Tommy Robinson.
It is amazing. So they arrested Tommy Robinson right there and then threw him immediately in jail. So arrested, tried, in jail. Now, those of you listening now, you might remember, so in the summer of 2024, this past summer, in August, I believe, there was a tragic murder, a set of murders in the UK. This young man, I think he was like 18 or something, a kid who'd been born in England of parents from Rwanda who were migrants or refugees from Rwanda, so-called. He stabbed and killed a bunch of little girls who were at a party. Three of them at least died, and several more were seriously injured. And this unleashed massive protests in the UK, and I was glad to see it. It's probably even illegal to say that in the UK. Honestly, it probably is. It's probably illegal to say that you supported those riots. Because people were, the riots were, people have been fed up for decades now with mass migration into their country and completely changing the look and feel and culture of their birthright, the country they were gifted by their forebears, by their ancestors. And they are mad. You know, it's not like nobody's saying that every migrant or every immigrant is a criminal. Nobody's saying that. That's not at all the case. But when you bring in large, millions of people who don't belong, from outside, they're not even from non-Europeans into a European country, you're going to have social problems, and you're going to have economic problems and housing problems, and And yeah, racial problems. Different groups there will be friction between these different groups. That's what happens. But remember, right after those riots in the UK, amazingly, the British police, I've never seen anything like it. Like within a week, they had arrested something like 1,000 people who had taken part in the riots. They had set up special courts. They tried them within something like 24 hours. It was insane, and threw them in jail. And some of them are in jail for a very long time. Some of them probably deservedly so, probably, It's one thing to protest. It's another thing to riot and cause serious damage and all that. Okay, fair enough. But it's amazing how fast justice can work when it's against the native people of the country, the native people whom you're supposed to be serving as a politician. It's amazing how fast it can work. Whereas it's amazing how slow it can work, or how it doesn't work at all in the case of, for example, this whole grooming gang scandal. Absolutely outrageous.
And we may criticize, our government may criticize the Russians, like for getting rid of Skripal and other spies they no longer want in our country. But our government knows if they put Tommy Robinson inside as they have done, and if he's put on an open wing, he will not survive his time inside. So I don't see how we're any different from the Russians. If this is how we're going to cleanse people that speak out against the establishment, these are dark times.
Where
for
the
UK,
media? Where are the media in this? I mean, so again, you don't have to like this guy or know anything about him to understand what's at stake here, which is freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of the press. Why would media outlets in Great Britain go along with this gag order? Why didn't they just defy it? Go ahead and arrest us all. If this isn't a civil rights issue, then what is a civil rights issue?
Well, this is where we divide, Tucker, into right and wrong, good and bad. And I have to say, I feel like majority of mainstream media right now in the UK is on the side of the bad. It is more important for them to be seen as multicultural and accepting and welcoming to our Muslim colleagues and our friends than it is to stand up for what we know is right. So it suits them much better to say, well, no, Tommy Robinson is an idiot. He was told not to be there at the court. He was still there at the court. And the law is in every sense justified to throw him inside. And they're celebrating, just as they're celebrating with Roseanne. But actually, what we have to ask ourselves is, what happened to freedom of speech in the UK? Because I firmly believe, and it's my opinion, we no longer have freedom of speech in the UK, and I believe Tommy Robinson will be killed inside the prison, and it will be the establishment that have blood on their hands.
Everybody watching this should be horrified. This is a threat not only to your rights, but to the rights of every American. Our rights derive from the British system. This may be a glimpse into our future. We should...
Yeah, very interesting. Of course, freedom of speech in the UK is completely different from freedom of speech in the United States. As I understand it, there is no equivalent to the American Bill of Rights. I could say the same for Belgium, where I live. Yeah, freedom of speech in European countries is quite different. Freedom of speech even in America is not absolute. There's plenty of case law or precedent from the Supreme Court stating what the limitations are on freedom of speech. That's all been set out. There's, over many, many decades. So, there are types of speech which are criminally actionable in the United States. So fair enough. But there's far, but you can get away with a lot. You can say a lot. That's why the establishment, the media establishment, the politicians, why they hate Twitter, especially the Europeans, because it's an American company, and people on there say all sorts of crazy things, very, very offensive things, very, very mean things, very, very racist things, very, very misogynistic things. They say all sorts of mean things. And, grown-ups would, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a grown-up, you see some guy on Twitter spouting something you don't like, well, do you run and cry to mommy, or do you just block them so you never see that again? Fair enough, curate your own experience. But European countries, they take the more, paternalistic approach, to put it nicely. They think, big daddy government should take care of you. And perhaps a lot of Brits think that way too. I don't know. I don't want to claim to know the British mind or anything like that. But whether they feel that way, that's the way it's become. Big daddy government is taking, is looking after you. They're keeping you safe, but they're not even doing that. They're not even doing that. And the country is on a downward slide and has been for a while now. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you for listening to this. I appreciate it. I know I'm doing a lot about this issue recently, but as I said, this issue is about a lot more than the grooming gangs. It's about a lot more than that. It's about mass migration. It's about destruction of European societies that was not asked for or wanted by the native populations of European countries or Western countries. It's about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. It's about all these things. So this is important, and I do appreciate you sticking around and watching these videos. It really helps me grow the channel. Like and subscribe, leave a comment. As I said, I read all comments, and I'm happy to engage in a respectful debate on anything that you disagree with me about. So see you guys in the next one.